Brown. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. Very nice to talk to you. It's morning here. I'm a little bleary-eyed because we had protests in my neighborhood last night that woke us up at an ungodly hour. So I hope I can still string a sentence together for you today. And I hope what I brought you will be useful. Welcome to the Steve and Steve Show today. Let me flash up some pretty slides here for you so that you have a visual treat to enjoy as we go through this. Hopefully you're getting that. So thank you for spending some time. I hope this will be useful for you as we take a glimpse into where I think the world is going. I spent almost 30 years of my career in high tech and was trained to think this way. So to think about the world roughly 10 years out. It's probably worth just addressing what is a futurist. I don't spend time in darkened rooms, smoking peyote and thinking, big thoughts. That's not the way being a futurist works. And it's not really about making predictions either. If you find a futurist that makes predictions about the future, they're not really a futurist. It's really about analyzing trends, and that's everything from, of course, technology trends to business trends, and perhaps most importantly, people trends. What do people want? What are they scared of? What are they afraid of? What are their relationships? Their aspirations, and looking at how those trends will converge over time, and then figuring out what will be possible in a certain time frame. So it's building out that possibility landscape and figuring out what's possible 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and then asking and answering two important questions. The first one is, what are we going to build? And the second one is, what do we want to avoid? And the answers to those two questions help you decide what your strategic plan is and help you shape the future, because we all play a role in helping to shape the future. And that leads, in my world at least, to creating a digital innovation plan. Any company right now, any organization right now, if they don't have a significant digital component to what they do, they are already way, way behind. So for any modern organization, having a digital plan and a digital innovation plan is vital to the future strategy of the company. So that's what I do. I advise companies all around the world in a wide range of industries, everything from retail through mortgages and real estate to manufacturing to the entertainment business to healthcare and beyond. So that's what I do, is I help advise companies on what those digital innovation plans should look like and try and inspire them with some fresh thinking. So that's what a futurist does. Not so much smoking peyote, more sort of a discipline. And in England, I know you call them futurologists. What are we going to talk about today? Three things. So firstly, we can't have a discussion right now without talking about COVID and what that is doing to businesses and organizations around the world. So we'll talk about it, and I'm going to characterize it as a three-headed beast, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Secondly, I want to talk about a framework that I'm proposing for how to think about driving innovation into organizations. And during that, I'll give you a bunch of really fun examples and stories from the near future to help bring that to life for you. And finally, I want to wrap up by offering you three lenses of ways to look at the world right now and the ways to think about the current situation that we're in and what that means in terms of opportunity for us all. So let's get going. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed the way that we all live right now. There's no one in the world that's escaping this. And we tend to think of it as this monolithic beast. But what I want to propose to you today is that we need to think about it actually as a three-headed beast. There are three separate crises. They're related to each other. One leads to the next. But they are three separate crises that require three different strategic responses. There's a public health crisis, of course. Because of that public health crisis and the need for social distancing, I prefer to call it physical distancing, that leads to an operational crisis, figuring out how to operate our businesses around that public health condition. And then that, in turn, is leading to an economic crisis. Each one of those requires a different response, and that's what I want to get into in the next few minutes. Let's start off with the public health crisis. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I am not a medical expert. but I do need to acknowledge it and to just share a couple of things on the ways technology is helping. But this is largely a safety, so safety in the workplace, and a medical response. So the key components, the things we're all very familiar with. We spend a lot of time, I'm sure, all of us on this call listening to the news. So I'm not going to tell you anything new and exciting here. Social distancing, the use of masks. There are some areas where technology can help with contact tracing using smartphones to help get through that. And there are also massive supercomputers being used to do protein folding and analysis to try and find therapeutics that can help reduce symptoms of COVID. And of course, it's part of the race for the vaccine. From an operational standpoint, it is important to realize that when we have a vaccine, assuming we can get one or more, and there are multiple candidates, if you do the maths, it's a very simple calculation. If we want to vaccinate everybody on planet Earth, if we need to vaccinate 241 people per second of every minute of every hour of every day for a year, if we want to do everybody in a year. So it is a monumental logistical task. It is not going to happen overnight. So that should inform our thinking on the time frame that we're up against here. The second head of the beast is an operational crisis. So the challenges that this presents to businesses as they try and operate around the public health crisis. To me, this presents as a resilience issue. How do you build business resilience? How do you assure business continuity in the face of this operational crisis? And there are different components to this. Let's go through them one by one. And by the way, resilience is something that we have to think about for our businesses, but it's also something we're thinking about for ourselves personally. So these apply equally to individuals as they do to groups of people in organizations. So financial resilience. Now, do you have the cash reserves to be able to bridge across significant challenges without having to let go of people and hire them all back later, which is a real pain in the bottom? Do you have a debt structure that enables you to be more financially resilient? So a lot of companies looking at those types of questions. Do you have organizational resilience? Do you have a succession plan in place if somebody needs to step aside for a while because of a health issue? Do you have cross-training in place? So if you had a whole team go down, could another team step up? Can you be more geographically dispersed as an organization? So if something happens in one locality, the rest of the company is able to function. A lot of clients that I work with, particularly in the United States and tech companies, they are campus-based. So if you're Microsoft or Nike or Facebook, you are in one location. That is a significant risk as a point of failure. Then operational. How can you continue to operate around the pandemic? And in this case, this is really thinking about new channels and automation so that you can continue to have your operations run, even if you don't have people that can come in. Now, not every company can operate this way, but at least ensuring you have 100% customer journey so that your customers can find you, interact with you, buy from you, and you can service them completely digitally and remotely is now a requirement for every company, every organization. Similarly, building a digital employee experience so that your employees can continue to work from home, or at least as many of them as you possibly can continue to work from home, is a requirement. So that leads you to the next point of resilience, which is digital resilience. Do you have an infrastructure that enables your workers to work from home? Do you have facilities so that they can use enterprise tools to work from home? And can you keep them connected? There are some organizations that are delivering hotspots to people in their homes so they can get the Wi-Fi connectivity, the bandwidth that they need in their homes. Supply chain resilience. Are you adequately diversified in your supply chain? Do you have relationships with your supply chains? Do you have multiple suppliers and redundancy and so on? And then finally, do you have business resilience? Do you have the right products and the right services for the new normal? So all of those moving parts are things that every business, every organization needs to be thinking about right now. And they relate to money flow, thinking about people, thinking about organizations, thinking about infrastructure, and so on. So it's a lot of moving parts going on. A lot of my clients have been busy thinking about this stuff for the last 2 to 3 months. The way that I think about this is a pressure test for your business, for your organization. The same way that if you build a pipe system and you want to make sure there's not got any leaks, you put it under pressure and see if anything squirts out. This is a pressure test for your business. It puts pressure on your business and allows you to see areas of weakness that already existed and that you need to fill those gaps. So as you move to make your business more resilient in the face of COVID, you are actually strengthening it for the long term. So investments that you make to bridge around COVID will serve you in the long term as the world moves to far more digital interaction and so on. The third component is the economic crisis. So because of the operational crisis, we now have an economic crisis, people being laid off, people not spending as much in the economy. And to get around this, I think the strategic response that's required is innovation at every level in an organization. So again, let me walk you through what that means. Let me give you some specific examples on ways that people are innovating forward in their industries. So the first thing to look at is, do I have the right offering? And can I make my offering more exciting? New products, new services, new experiences. And in my book, that means embracing technology to turbocharge the offering and to make sure that what you're giving to customers is something that excites them and brings them back. So how do you sort of reignite demand for your products and services using innovation? Second piece, how do I build new channels, reach new customers and new markets? This is, again, an opportunity to use technology to build new channels, to think voice interfaces, think new digital delivery channels, and so on. And the companies that have had those channels in place already are doing far better financially right now than laggards who did not invest in building those kind of new channels. And by the way, you don't have to be, a big forward-looking tech company to have made those investments. I'm going to talk about my book in a few minutes. I created these little cardboard boxes to put them in, and I printed them from an old school manufacturing company. The whole process of designing the boxes, ordering them was 100% digital online. I was able to get tech support with a chat bot online, fantastic service from an old school cardboard manufacturing company. This can be done by everybody. Next thing is to look at your workforce and figure out how can you bring innovation, not to replace your workforce, but to elevate their capabilities. I'm going to give you a bunch of fun examples on how AI and other technologies are already being used to do that. A big study by Accenture indicated that companies that invest in automation efforts only, so with a goal to replace human labor, they gain short-term gains. They get short-term gains from those investments. But the companies that made investments built around creating partnerships between humans and machines working together, they got the best gains in the medium to long term. So really this is not, you need a thoughtful automation and what I would call automation and augmentation strategy designed to elevate workers and not just with the goal to replace them. We'll talk more about that. Innovation in operations, streamlining operations, making them more efficient, automating some tasks, making the workflow much more efficient. And then business model innovation. How do you develop new business models and potentially new revenue streams by using technology to do business in a new way? So sort of twist your offering and create a new business model. I'll give you an example of that in a few moments as well. So those 5 directions for innovation in business are the ones that I focus my time on and I help my clients with. How do you do that? Well, the way I think about this in this time is this is a pressure cooker for innovation. It is a crappy time right now. And no one's enjoying this particularly, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. I'm always looking for the silver lining. the way I think about this as a pressure cooker of innovation is, with this pressure and with constraint, you get great leaps forward in innovation. If you think about World War II, that was a really miserable time, extreme circumstances. But out of World War II, we saw the productization of antibiotics at scale. Antibiotics, in the form of penicillin, discovered in 1928 by Alexander Fleming, but then productized and used at scale for the first time with the Normandy landings. Modern air traffic today, the radar systems that support it, pressurized cabins, the jet engine, all came out of World War II, as did rockets. We would not have GPS satellites today without the rockets that were generated out of World War II. That does not say that those things would not have happened eventually, but they are accelerated in that pressure cooker of extreme circumstances. There are 6 big technologies that I think will shape the next decade in business. If I look back over the last 40 or 50 years, there were 4, I'm doing my fingers there, 4 technologies that shaped the last 4 decades. So the PC that came out in 1981, the internet, the web, the World Wide Web that was launched in the early 90s, 1990, 1991, the mobile generation, so 2007, the iPhone came out, and that changed the way that we interact with digital information and services. And then finally, the cloud, the ability for businesses to build new capabilities without having to make major investments in infrastructure. Those 4 technologies combined defined business innovation and technology-based business innovation over the last 4 decades. 6 technologies are all coming of age in this single decade and will be combined by innovators, a little bit like colors in an artist's palette. So a little bit of artificial intelligence applied to a little bit of sensing technology and some augmented reality, and boom, I have a new experience, I have a new product, I have a new channel. So the creative combination of these 6 technologies is what is going to shape business in the coming decade. And that's what my book is all about, which I'll tell you a little bit in a minute. Of course, it's going to be a shameless plug, but I'm hoping it will be a useful resource for all of you as you think through these types of problems. So let me quickly just review what those 6 technologies are. Artificial intelligence, probably hear a lot about it in the news. You may know quite a bit about how it works. If you don't, the fundamental thing that you need to know is AI is a different type of computing. It is not like traditional digital computing that solves problems by writing programs where you use rules to automate something or to solve a problem. Artificial intelligence learns from examples. And it is the reason it's important is it lets us solve problems that we don't know how to solve ourselves. I'll say that again because that's the important thing to know. It lets us solve problems that we don't know how to solve ourselves, because AI, when you train it with examples, figures out its own rules on how to get from A to B. So I'll give you some examples of that in a minute, but think of AI also as a gigantic prediction machine. That's what AI does. It makes predictions. And you can use that to predict everything from what will my demand be 3 months from now, to what's the best way to organize my operations, to what was it that guy just said. And that's why artificial intelligence underpins a lot of these voice engines that you see in the market today. Satellite and 5G networks is the next technology. 5G, it comes after 4G, which is what we all have today. It's one more G, must be better. 5G is going to be dramatically better in a number of different ways than 4G technology. 5G is 10 to 100 times faster. It is far more responsive to requests that you give to the internet, and it is far more reliable and scalable. So this is the first cellular technology that is designed specifically to connect things that are not cell phones. So you'll see this transition into a wide range of industries and allow us to connect basically anything and everything in cities. Outside of cities, 5G is not going to be broadly available, and that's where satellite networks come in, and I will talk about those more in a few moments. Augmented reality, for those of you familiar with virtual reality immerses you in a digital world. Augmented reality blends digital objects and information into your field of view and blends it with your physical view of the world. It's not quite ready for prime time yet, but when it comes, it will be the next mobile technology, it'll be the next cell phone, the next smartphone. The smartphone has become the remote control for modern life, and it will continue to be that, but augmented reality may become the primary way that we interact with digital information and services, an exciting technology. Blockchain technology is it's typical. In my book, I describe this as a little bit like eating your technology broccoli. It is a dull but important technology. It's kind of like plumbing. You need to have it in your house. If you don't have it, you'd really notice. But blockchain technology is a way of creating trust digitally between two parties. And it can be used to disintermediate businesses and to smooth transactions and to create new value with what's called dApps, distributed applications. In the scope of the time we have today, I can't go into any more detail on that. If you're interested, get a copy of my book. The fifth technology, Internet of Things and Sensors. This is tiny computers inside everything, and particularly it's about sensors. Sensors allow the digital world that we know increases in capability exponentially to understand what is happening in our physical world and therefore start to act upon it to make the world more responsive to human needs. That's the way to think about IoT. It can also make your factories more efficient, responsive, and so on. Final technology is autonomous machines, taking AI and sensors and allowing machines to understand the world around them and therefore operate within it. That's everything from smart robots and drones to self-driving cars and passenger drones. What I mean by passenger drones is essentially flying cars in the next 3 to 5 years. So those are the 6 technologies. Let me move this forward. The way I think about this is looking at the intersections of those technologies with the 5 business goals that I shared with you a moment ago around innovation, and looking at how could I use each of those technologies. So for example, what's the intersection of the Internet of Things and Sensors with enhanced worker experience? Or what is the intersection of new products, services, and experiences with artificial intelligence? In each of those 30 intersections is an opportunity to innovate in your organization. That's my bread and butter. That's what I do, is I help organizations find what is at those intersections. And some examples, and there's a lot that could go on here, so I've just picked something for each one of these boxes. I'm going to walk you through 10 examples from this network, so you get a feel for the kind of innovation that you can get when you look at these intersections. So let's start off with satellite networks and new customers, new channels. This is an opportunity to reach 4 billion new consumers. 4 billion new consumers. We're heading towards 8 billion people on the planet by the end of this decade. Roughly 4 billion people are online today. Many of them do not have the opportunity to be connected to the internet. Satellite and 5G networks will do that. So this is a race of billionaires. So Blue Origin is an Amazon company run by Jeff Bezos. SpaceX is Elon Musk's company. They are putting up, in the next 5 years, they will put more satellites into orbit than in the entirety of human history to date. And those satellites will be used to build a communications umbrella in low Earth orbit. So these are not geostationary, these are low Earth orbit, which means they need to race around the planet to stop from crashing into the Earth. And those moving networks of satellites will form this umbrella that will connect everything and everyone everywhere on Earth by the end of the decade, or at least make that possible. And you can think about this as sort of 4.5G speeds in terms of connectivity. A lot of this will be paid for by Wall Street and other financial centers in the world. Why? Because signals move faster through the vacuum of space than they do through fiber optic cables that run underneath the Atlantic, for example, or the Pacific Ocean. So it is quicker to get a signal from a trading desk in New York to a trading desk in London using these satellite networks. And those fractions of a millisecond make a huge difference if you're trading commodities using AI. And so a lot of these companies, the Goldman Sachs of the world, will be happy to spend the billions of dollars required to get this up and running. The benefit is this then becomes available to everybody else to then connect the rest of the planet. So what are you going to do to reach the next 4 billion customers that are coming online in the next decade? Next example. How do you use Internet of Things and sensors to create new business models and new revenue streams? This is about taking products and services and elevating them to experiences and transformations. As you move from product to service to experience to transformation, you get paid exponentially more by your customers. So here's an example of a smart connected toothbrush. Now that might sound like a really stupid idea, and on the surface, it kind of is. It's a connected toothbrush that connects to your smartphone and tells you how well you're doing brushing your teeth. Still sounds fairly simple and fairly silly, right? Now here's the thing. This was developed by a dentist that because the dentist, and in the United States, you don't have national health insurance, or you don't have the National Health Service and free dentistry. You pay for it here, and it costs $50 to $60 a month to get that insurance. Because this dentist is able to know that you're brushing your teeth properly, you have good oral hygiene, he knows that you have a lower risk of requiring expensive treatments and is therefore able to offer you dental insurance for 15 to 20% less than all of his competition. Completely changing the business model. Now you get the smart toothbrush as part of this insurance thing, and you get as much toothpaste and floss as you can use as part of that whole encompassing service. So no longer are you selling a product, a toothbrush, you're elevating it to an entire insurance package, including a full sort of oral hygiene service or experience. Let's pick another one. This time we'll go to the bottom left corner, artificial intelligence and new business models. This is an example from London. This is using the predictive power of artificial intelligence to make higher quality business decisions. In this case, an investment decision. It's a company called Propertunity. And Propertunity uses artificial intelligence to look at property prices and pick properties that it thinks are going to increase in value more than the market in the next 5 years. They then find first-time buyers who are looking to buy a house, and they take a 15% equity stake in that property. That allows the first-time buyer to get a bigger house than they would have otherwise done as they get on the bottom rung of the ladder. It allows them to get access to lower interest rates. And when they come to sell the house, Propertunity takes back their 15% stake with whatever increase in the value has come to the consumer. So it's a win-win for everybody. So using artificial intelligence to help make intelligent investment decisions. Let's do another one. Let's shift to the bottom right corner now. Autonomous machines combined with new business models. This is the idea of a robot as a service. This comes from the world of agriculture. This is a Swiss robot from a company called Eco Robotics. What you're seeing here is a robot that can tend to a farmer's field. Rather than spray the field with chemicals almost indiscriminately and just spray it with herbicide, this robot runs on solar power. So what you can't see on the top there is a solar panel. It can run for 11 or 12 hours a day, completely autonomously in a field. So the farmer rents it for the day, lets it run wild in the field, and it roams through the field, and it can either mechanically zap weeds with a spinning sharp tool, or it can spot spray the weed with herbicide. And it does that because it uses artificial intelligence, machine vision, and can see the difference between a weed and a plant. The result of that is the farmer is able to use 90% less herbicide on their fields. Average farmer, that saving is $100,000 per year, and a lot less herbicide chemical leaching into the local water supply. So this is great news for farmers and bad news for Dow Chemical. Another example, and this spans a couple of boxes here. This is an idea of an augmented reality worker. Virtual reality so far has largely been for games and consumer applications. Augmented reality, because it keeps you connected in your physical environment, has far more applications in the business world. Let me give you a couple of examples here. First one, Microsoft is very active in this space with their HoloLens headset. And what you're seeing here is this idea of an augmented reality worker who is shown step by step what to do as they're working on a production line or perhaps doing a maintenance or repair job. So it allows you to essentially deliver real-time training in the moment. So let's say, for example, a robot repair person went out to the field 7 years from now. She opens up a robot, she's not familiar with this robot, puts on a headset, it shows her step by step, open this, disconnect this, test this. And then the next time the worker does it, maybe she's learned from that and doesn't need a headset. But it just enables you to build this combination of digital intelligence and human intelligence combined into one hybrid worker. This is going to be a significant benefit to particularly the manufacturing industry, who have big turnover in their manufacturing staff, particularly here in the US. They have huge turnover problems, and training people can take a long time. So being able to have people be productive day one with these types of products is a huge, huge step forward. Another example of augmented reality workers, I have a number of friends who are surgeons. When you are doing surgery, you're typically using imaging, whether that's an X-ray, a CT scan, PET scan, whatever it might be, and that imaging is on a screen which is usually up and to your side. So you're looking at the patient, and then to figure out what you're looking at, you have to look up and away, back to the patient, up and away, back to the patient, up and away. And in their mind, they're trying to put the two things on top of each other. Augmetics specializes in capabilities to put those things right in front of the surgeon's eyes and essentially give them X-ray vision, being able to see through the patient's skin and inside their body so they can more accurately place instruments or make incisions and so on. So a pretty powerful set of technologies. And this is only at its very beginning. You can imagine this type of technology being available to everybody and changing the way that we perceive the world around us. All right, so that's a couple of quick examples from augmented reality worker. There are a ton more in that space, but in the interest of time, let's move on to an adjacent category, which is the augmented worker. This is an idea of using artificial intelligence not to replace people, but to elevate their capabilities, to elevate their skills. I'll give you a couple of examples here. First, a company that's based in part here in Portland. They have a big facility here in Portland, Autodesk. You probably know of them for creating computer-aided design tools. They have embraced this idea of what's called generative design, using a special flavor of AI that can be used to co-create with people. So rather than replacing an engineer or a designer, what the AI does is it takes the original design that the engineer or designer creates and then riffs on that and comes up with hundreds or even thousands of alternatives that meet the same constraints, but achieve them in a different way. So they can then be optimized for the design of those thousands of design options that maybe is physically stronger, has more tensile strength, maybe it costs less to make, maybe it's physically lighter. And you see in a lot of these photographs here that you get these very organic looking designs. There's a reason for that. Nature optimizes, and the AI is doing the same thing. And that's why you get these very organic looking designs that are actually stronger or lighter or cheaper to make than an alternative that would have been originally designed by a human. So another great example of humans and machines working together and doing something that machine couldn't do alone and the human could not do alone. So this is an example of AI being used to augment our human creativity and our human imagination. There are many other examples in that realm too. Here's another couple of companies focused on the real estate market. First is focused on residential, and Skyline is focused on commercial. They are using AI to boost our intuition. First looks at the contact list of the people, of the clients that a real estate agent has serviced in the past, and then predicts which of those clients will be in the market for a new home. So that a real estate agent knows, has the intuition to reach out to them at just the right time. And it is spookily accurate. Second company, Skyline, they are a private company. They have a proprietary AI that is used to guess which businesses should be commanding higher leases, higher rent for the space that they have, and therefore informs their investment decisions as they buy commercial office space and then put those out for lease. So a couple of examples there of using AI to augment and elevate human work. Final example, moving from using AI to now using robots, which is AI in sort of physical form, to elevate human capabilities. First example I'll give you is a company in Seattle called Drone Seed. They are using drones with, they're essentially a flying paintball gun. So they have a seed inside some nutrients, and it sits inside a pellet. And these are big drones. They can carry up to 50 pounds in weight. So what's that, 20 kilos in these pellets. And they fly over a landscape and then fire those pellets into the ground to plant new trees. So their goal is to fight climate change by making reforestation much more scalable and affordable. So the average human tree planter can plant about 2 acres of trees in a day. Using a swarm of these drones, and these drones can be controlled by one person, and the drones work together in a swarm, they believe they will be able to increase that by 80-fold. So one person will be able to amplify their reach to 160 acres of coverage in a single day. That's impressive. Final example is a heartwarming one from Japan. Company called Ori Labs. They're a robot company. They make these cute little robots you see here. And these robots work in a cafeteria. It's called the Dawn Robot Avatar Cafe. Now, these are not normal robots because these robots are controlled remotely by people with severe disabilities, people who could not otherwise work in the workforce, people with ALS, people who have severe disabilities that mean they can't move. And so they've rigged up controls for these robots using looking at their eye movements or moving the tongue to be able to move these around, and then so they can have interaction and service the customers in the cafe. An amazing way to take someone's physicality and project it into a different space. So giving those people worth, I mean, there are 10 people that work in this cafe using these robots, and the stories that you hear, there's a video you can look at. If you go on YouTube and just do Dawn Avatar Robot Cafe, it'll pop right up. It's the most heartwarming story you'll see today. So that was 10 examples of fun things that people are already doing, just to give you an idea of the types of breakthroughs. And there are many more stories I could have brought you. If you want to get more of those, you can find them in my lovely book, which you can see behind me here. And it's available on Amazon, all good bookstores. But the structure of the book is it goes through each of those 6 technologies. It will give you a little bit of the technologies, sort of how they work, but that's not my goal with the book. This is written for business leaders who I realized the pace of technology improvement has now outstripped leaders' ability to understand the business impact of those technologies on their future. So it's really focused on what are the business implications of those technologies. What are the questions you need to be asking as a leader so that you are empowered to lead change in your organization? You know, it's really, we've got to the time where it's just not fair that a chief medical officer at a hospital or a chief marketing officer at a big retailer or a CEO at a manufacturing company, they're not supposed to be AI experts. That's where I come in. That's what I'm trying to offer as a service to people. So to help you as well, on my website, which Steve mentioned earlier, if you go to Bald Futurist, so as in my haircut, baldfuturist.com, up on that website, you can download a free PDF of this worksheet to help you think through. And you'll see there are a lot more examples on there than I was able to share today to get you started. All right, let's wrap this up with, I said I'd give you 3 lenses as a way to think about this time. The first one is, this has been a time of great reflection as we as individuals in our lockdown homes and as leaders of organizations, we've been forced to face the fragility of the modern world, of our organizations and our own lives. And that's also caused us to reflect on our personal values, the values of our organizations, and what life is all about. What's our purpose? What do we want out of life? What's our organization's purpose and priorities? So this has been a time of great reflection here in the United States, and to some extent, the rest of the world. There's an additional layer of reflection as a result of thinking about race and the role of police in society. So it is a time of great reflection. That is an opportunity for businesses and organizations to drive needed change. Secondly, this has been the great acceleration. Every company that I talk to is looking at their business plans for 2025, 2030, and saying, how can we do them next year? How can we bring everything in? All the things that we knew we needed to do someday, we now know we need to do right now. So automation efforts, digital transformation efforts, innovation efforts, they are all being accelerated. If you are not accelerating, you're behind. We're also seeing the rise of companies that were going to rise anyway, think Amazon, and the demise of companies that were going to fail anyway. Pick your big retail chain of choice that was already on dodgy ground and is now struggling or has gone chapter 11 here in the United States. Finally, I think most importantly, this is the great defrosting. Organizations tend to be frozen in place for a number of reasons. For regulation, think the healthcare industry. For tradition, think the educational sector, because there's a culture of risk aversion or perhaps complacency, or management's just fresh out of ideas. We are now seeing the great defrosting, that COVID is forcing change. For example, in the healthcare industry in the United States, people were generally not using telehealth, using their phones to talk to doctors. That has completely changed. When we go back from when COVID is all out of the way and we can go back to our lives, people aren't going to go back to the way of going into doctor's offices when they can just talk to the doctor through their phone. So it is causing a new normal, and we are melting the entrenched system, and it will freeze back into a different shape once this is done. This presents an opportunity for change agents in organizations to take advantage of this and ensure that your organization refreezes into the shape that you need it to be. So these 3 things together present an opportunity for you to drive needed change into your organization, to overcome all of the people who said, oh no, we can't because their protestations are no longer relevant, or at least they are somewhat diminished. So to wrap this up, 5 pieces of advice for you all. First of all, whatever your level of technology acumen, invest in boosting it. Learn more about AI and what it can do for your business, how it can make you more competitive, for example. So understand all of those 6 technologies. Secondly, ensure that your customer journey is 100% digital end-to-end, that customers can hear about your products, hear about your brand, that they can interact with you, they can learn more about you, they can buy those products, they can have them delivered to them, and they can get all of the support that they need and all of the loyalty that comes with that post-purchase digitally. Similarly, do the same thing for your employees. Get as many of them to have a digital employee experience as you possibly can. As a result of that digital employee experience, start to ask yourself tough questions. Are you an office first business, or are you going to shift to a remote first business? Meaning that most of your employees, the norm is for them to be remote. You've already seen Facebook announce that they're probably going to move to a 50% remote model. I'm talking to a number of other organizations that are also looking at the benefits in terms of more flexibility for employees, reduced real estate costs, and importantly, better talent acquisition opportunities. Rather than looking at the catchment area within 30, 40 miles of your office, being able to attract talent from different parts of the world to work for your organization. So there's a lot of questions to be asked and answered there. Once you've done that, to then think about what is your new normal. When this is all over, how will things be different? We're not going back to December 2019. What's the new normal for your customers? What is the new normal for your employees? What's the new normal for your suppliers? How will it be different for you as a business, and how do you respond? What is your strategic plan? How do you shift your course of action as a result? Not in the short term with safety measures and that sort of thing. What is your long-term shift? And that leads you into an innovation plan. How do you innovate forwards? How do you catapult yourself out of the recession that we're now in and that I think is going to deepen? And how do you make sure that when you come out of recession on the other side, you are poised on a growth path versus your competition? If you need help doing that, that is how you find me. You can email me, you can check out my website, you can follow me on the social media. You can reach out to me through LinkedIn. I'll leave those up for a few moments there. And you can also, of course, final shameless plug, get one of my beautiful books, The Innovation Ultimatum, available in all good bookstores. And you know what? When I wrote this book, I knew it would be relevant, interesting, important. I had no idea how important it was going to be. What I wrote about in this book is a 10-year horizon. I think with COVID-19, we're looking at all of that accelerating probably to a 5 to 7 year time horizon, and in some cases faster than that. So I didn't know it I had to put the words down on paper mid-August last year. I didn't realize how relevant this is going to be, but I'm hoping this will be a useful resource to you all. And if you want to buy a bunch of these, you can contact me directly. I'll find a way to get you a bulk deal so you can give them to your entire team, for example. All right, that is me done. I am going to pause now for question and answers so I can slug some water. So Bob, back over to you.
Steve, thanks very much indeed. Wow. I mean, that was absolutely fantastic. Really, really, really interesting. And hopefully there'll be plenty of questions out there. I've got a number I could ask. I'm going to shamelessly steal the first one while people are thinking about what they want to do. Please do stick your questions in the, stick your hands up as I talked about, and I'll rack and stack them for that. You have the ability to unmute yourself now when it gets to questions as well. Steve, I'm going to, two things, the kind of black side, white side here. What are you most optimistic about out of all of that? And equally, there's a lot of argumentation from some pretty esteemed people, Stephen Hawking being one of them before he died, about AI and the risks around AI. What are you most worried about from all of this as well?
With great power comes great responsibility. And these technologies I'm talking about are incredibly powerful. And therefore, they can be used both for powerful good and for powerful bad. So that's why I said at the beginning, the job of a futurist is to ask, what's the future we want to build, and what is the future we want to avoid? The most powerful of all of those technologies is artificial intelligence. That's why it's chapter 1 in my book, and the longest chapter in my entire book. It is a force of incredible good. There is a chance that the children or grandchildren of somebody on this call today will have their lives saved by a drug that was co-developed using an AI. So it is going to do amazing things for humanity. At the same time, it can be used to create fake news. If you think a Russian troll farm with 200 people in St. Petersburg can do damage, wait till you have an AI that can pump out 1 million fake stories every day and flood the market. So AI is probably both the thing I'm most excited about and that I think has the most potential for doing good. It is also the one that we need to worry about and pay attention to. And one of the things that we really need to think about and talk about is bias in AI. Because AI learns from examples, it typically is learning from human examples. So we need to make sure that when we train AIs, we make them better than us. Because if they only reflect human behavior, they will reflect human biases, and that's not necessarily a good thing. Amazon found that out when they built an AI to look at CVs and decide which people should be interviewed and which ones shouldn't, based on being trained on tens of thousands of CVs that it had seen from real candidates in the past. What they found was that AI was biased against women. What that told you is that the hiring practices of Amazon managers historically had been biased against women. So AI can be a great mirror to reflect ourselves and help us to become better as human beings.
Brilliant. No, thank you very much. Graham Galt, please.
Stephen, thank you very much for that. That was fascinating. 50 minutes or so of walk dance through the future. I'd like to pick up on one of the points that you raised at the end, which was the fact that you think the time horizon from the book that was originally 10 years has been accelerated to 5 to 7 due to COVID. Are there any things which you think you've mentioned in the book which you think are no longer likely to happen at all because of what we've seen happen over the last 3 or 4 months? Are the things that have gone from 10 years to have gone the opposite way, maybe from 10 years to 20 or 30? Thank you.
Great question. Thanks, Graham. I'm not seeing much that decelerates or that stops as a result of this. I'm seeing some things that stop as a result of increased awareness of institutional racism, particularly in that AI area. There's an AI I talk about in my book called PredPol, which was used to predict where crimes would happen by the LAPD. And they just announced a couple of weeks ago that they're going to scrap that program. So I've not seen anything that COVID is decelerating yet. I'll think about it some more, but everything I've seen so far is an acceleration of trends or an acceleration of the demise of business models or companies that were going to fail anyway.
Brilliant, thanks. Len Pannett, please.
Steve, thanks very much for that. Interestingly, I had a book came out last year on 3D printing that made some of the similar conclusions, and it would have been good to see additive manufacture as another column on your chart there. Although the pictures of your Autodesk models were created using 3D printing.
Right.
I'm an operations consultant. What I do is help organizations with the implementation of change, and a lot of that is technology-led change. And some of the things that you were describing there, I've seen over the last few years, the advent of AI, for example, in operations. We're all used to using Siri and what have you that use it nowadays. One challenge that I've been tossing with for the last 3 months, though, is, well, now we're all working remotely. How do we do change management, given we are no longer in the same room? We don't have the whiteboards. We don't have the same solutions, the same approaches that we've done in the past. My conclusion is, well, we're going to have to throw out how we used to do it and come up with a new way. Have you thought about how we do it?
Not about that specifically, but certainly, I mean, whether it's change management or any other type of collaboration, and we're using very early generation collaboration tools here with Zoom today. It's good. It gets us by. And, think about how would we all have dealt with this time 5 years ago, right, without these tools in place. We're going to see a next generation of collaboration tools coming out. I think as we move into, I had to pick and choose what I shared today. I could have shared a lot more examples, but augmented reality as a tool to allow us to feel like we're sharing the same physical space will be a huge step forward in helping us to collaborate as humans. Humans collaborate best when they are in the same physical space. And so being able to use digital tools that create that illusion and allow us to share a digital whiteboard or other tools that help us to visualize the concepts that we're talking about will make a big difference. And that's the one I'm waiting for. When in terms of the time frame of when we're going to see those types of products, HoloLens today is way too expensive, and it's really a prototyping tool. $3,500 for a headset is too much. Apple is in the race. They are rumored to have a consumer product coming to market in the 2022 and 2023 timeframe. And from there, we'll be off to the races, and we'll see those cost reduce, capabilities increase, and then an entire application ecosystem wrap around it that I think will be largely focused on collaboration.
Great, thanks.
Thanks, Len.
Brilliant. Keith Smith, please.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for a fantastic and mind-boggling talk. Just quickly, you mentioned satellites, you mentioned blockchain, you mentioned resilience. How far do you think concerns about protecting personal data or protecting these advanced systems against those who would want to exploit them for unreasonable purposes? How much do you think those considerations are going to put a brake on the art of the possible? And are we going to see some spectacular failures as part of your forward vision?
Yeah, thanks, Keith. Good question. And we will see failures. Of course we will. And every time you connect something, you make it a target, right? It becomes what in the security business we call a threat surface, an attack surface, a threat vector. And so when you connect an object, a piece of infrastructure, you have to make sure that you have end-to-end security built forward to end. And you need to know where the data is going and have contracts and practices in place to know where data is going and who it's being sold to. We have allowed an entire industry to form based on selling our digital exhausts, on gathering information about us and using it against us in a way to be used as advertising fuel. That surveillance economy is as a result of us all being cheapskates, right? We trained ourselves that everything on the internet was for free, and the only way that companies could survive was to monetize the data that we gave them. Is that a good thing? No, absolutely not. And we may see the rise of more business models, and I think blockchain certainly helps with that, to create decentralized platforms. We may see a decentralized blockchain-based rival to Facebook, for example, that allows us to share information with each other, but to keep control over that and to maintain our own privacy while still getting the benefit of finding out that, you know, Aunt Doris had a birthday and, you know, Pete had a baby or whatever it might be. So we need to be much more thoughtful about how we implement these things. And as we hyper-connect the world, we need to be more careful about making sure that we think about what we're building and also ask the tough questions. What's the future that we want to avoid? When I help my clients think through that, we do what's called science fiction prototyping. We design the object or service or experience that they want to create, and then pressure test it in a story that goes, you know, 5-10 years out in the future, to figure out what are the security holes. How might somebody use this against us, to use it maliciously, and then plug those holes proactively. So it is a huge issue, and it is going to cause major bumps in the road, but that has always been the case with technology. So thanks, a great question, Keith.
So I've got several others. I've got a couple in chat as well, and one of them I think links quite neatly to that last one. So Jane Platt, please.
Great talk, Steve. My question is about the fact that your assumptions seem to be based on the unstoppable march of internationalization. Do you think that governments might put some constraints on all of this so that your original time frame of 10 years might be more realistic?
Yes and no. I mean, yes, there is absolutely a role for government, and I hope that they put their fingers on it more, but in an informed way. Unfortunately, a lot of people who are in government don't really know much about technology, and try and stop things from happening that are not an issue, or try and stop things by making draconian changes that have impacts that are undesired. So yes, I think we will see demands from consumers for more regulation over the high-tech industry and over technology in general, particularly when it comes to data privacy. You've seen GDPR in Europe. I think you will see an equivalent of that in the United States in the next 2 to 3 years. That is what I'm hearing from the people I know in Washington. And it will probably be stronger than GDPR was, if anything. So certainly there is a place for regulation. We need to hopefully do informed regulation that isn't always aiming at the barn door that's left open with the horse already fled, and also doesn't inhibit much needed innovation that I think can do good things for humanity. Walking through that pathway is a difficult task, and it requires government to know about technology, and it requires technology to understand how government works. And those are two fields that are not very well acquainted these days. So great question. I guess we'll all have to wait and see how it turns out.
Brilliant, thank you. And Matthew Plumridge, please.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much for, can you hear me all right? Can you hear me?
I can hear you great, yeah.
Thanks very much for a very interesting talk. Interesting certainly in the way for me for the farming and environment and those sorts of benefits. But I think quite scary in another way, because I just wonder if this is now going to be the talk for big business and the really big global players, and what I would call the really smart people, which the majority of us are sort of not. I work in a small business, my own business, and I work in the charitable sector. And the charitable sector normally is one of those sectors that's at least 10 to 15, if not 20 years behind the curve of most big business. So I'm just wondering whether big business is going to romp away, but small business and the charity sector really are going to be those that are left behind.
Yeah, and I think you're asking about the digital divide in general, right? The haves, the technology haves and have-nots, whether that's an individual or a business. The good news is that some businesses will focus on delivering services to other small businesses to help enable them with the technology that they need. So that's one of the areas where cloud has really helped, is to level the playing field. So you don't need to have a massive investment in infrastructure. You can use infrastructure as a service, whether that the robot as a service that I showed you. Maybe a small farmer can't afford to buy that robot. Only a big farm can afford to buy a robot, but there'll be a company that allows them to get that robot as a service. Maybe there are small retailers that can't afford to have an IT person rig up a smart digital store for them, but there are companies like Shopify that enable them to very quickly stand up an online store on top of an existing platform designed specifically for small businesses. So yes, it is more daunting, but I believe there will be third parties that will recognize that opportunity and provide products and services to support the small players. I'm a small player. I'm a company of one. Yes, I use a lot of these cloud businesses to help do that.
I mean, I think in the last 3 months, we've all discovered something called Zoom, which has propelled us forward. And so, you know, I can see the advantage there, but I'm just a bit concerned that I'd call the average player, the small business, and certainly the charitable sector could really get left behind if we're not careful.
I've not seen evidence of that happening yet. And I work with, as a charity that works across the street here that I work with, and they do find it daunting, but the opportunity is there for everybody. If you get the technology acumen that you need, there will be suppliers that can help give you what you need to remain. I mean, this is a battle for relevance, right? Every company on the planet needs to remain relevant. Job number one. To do that, that's going to require taking this digital journey. And there are suppliers out there that can help you do that, I promise you.
Thanks so much. It's been brilliant.
Yeah, thanks, Matthew.
So we've just got a couple of questions left, actually. One that's just popped up. So Sian Harrington, please. Actually, Peter, you just raised your hand, so we'll give you Peter after that. And then the last one will be Phil Sampson.
Hi. Can you? I think I've got this on right, have I? Can you hear me?
We can see you.
Yeah. I'm interested in the sort of organization design and the people bit of this. And one of the sort of conversations I'm having a lot at the moment is that hierarchical type organizations, the leaders of those are really struggling with this lack of their sort of visibility, because as we're all doing this, it's like distributed leadership, isn't it? We're all equal here. And I wonder how many businesses are really going to embrace the changes we're already seeing going on, or whether the organization is going to fight back. And as soon as people can, they're going to try and bring back the old ways of working, the old structures, etc. Have you sort of got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, if the only power you have is organizational power, it's not really power. And I think that's revealing this. Yeah, I've talked with senior people in companies who were absolutely against it. You have to be in the office. I need to see you in your seat. You know, I need you to be in here from, in the United States, it's 8 in the morning till 5 at night. And if you're not, then that's a problem. And that's old thinking. We need to move from time management to results management. And companies that aren't doing that are already falling behind anyway. So I think, yes, we will see organizational structures change for lots of other reasons as well. You're seeing much more of a need for dynamic teams. So having a fixed organizational chart where you're constantly having to reorganize because you're doing it based on teams, on dynamic needs, is just not helpful. So I think you're going to see much more in the way of labor pools, which are able to dynamically form to work on a project and then disband and then move to a different project in different configuration, and see more flexibility in workers where you have a continuum. Instead of being either employed or a contractor, there will be this blend in between. I think you're going to see all sorts of different models. The final thing I would offer from an organizational standpoint is to start thinking about your CHRO, your head of HR, and your CIO, your head of the IT department, as being two new best friends, because they now preside over a blended human and machine workforce working tightly together.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. I look forward to seeing that.
Okay, thanks. Peter Patel, please. Peter, you look like you're frozen. You still there? Oh, that's sad. Okay, so Phil Sampson then, please.
Hi there, Steve. A quick one from me, and I think you've answered a little bit of it there. But the future of employment and how people are going to work interests me, because I think it's something that's going to change rather rapidly with the paucity of jobs, certainly that are available now in terms of COVID, and the need for people to work. Can you elaborate further on that, please?
Yeah, so I do a lot of work on the future of work. And what does all this technology do to the workplace? How will it change the way people work, will interact with each other, and what jobs will it destroy? Inevitably, technology and automation will destroy some jobs. A survey by Pricewaterhouse, probably a couple of years ago, I think 2018 survey, focused on the UK job market, found that AI will destroy 7 million jobs by the year 2035 or so. Now that's a big headline. The other part of that is that they believe in the same time frame, AI will create 7.2 million new jobs. So a net increase in jobs. The question is, the skills that you need to do the 7 million jobs that go and the skills that you need to do the 7.2 million jobs that are created are different. So this becomes an educational challenge more than a job market challenge. Now, what happens with COVID and the economy and what's going to happen with jobs, I am not an economist, so I'm not the right person to ask about that. But when it comes to the job market and technology's impact, we may see a net increase in jobs, but we're going to have to really focus hard to give people the skills they need to be able to thrive in those new jobs. And those skills are typically the soft skills. They're the things that make us uniquely human. Empathy, creativity, systems thinking, those sorts of skills. And those are skills that we need to help everybody develop. And if you're thinking about how do I make myself robot proof, what do I tell my children or my grandchildren on how to become robot proof, it is to double down on the skills that make you uniquely human. And that's a talk I do separate to this, but it gives you a flavor of the type of things. And again, I think it's a chapter 10 or 11 of the book dives into that in quite a lot more detail. So thanks for the great question.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Right, Steve, as they say, that's a wrap. That was absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. I'll hand you back to Steve Fletcher just to wrap up.